Faith wasn't meant to keep you poor. Let me make this unmistakably clear. Wealth begins in the mind, not in the markets, not in your hands, not in the world outside you. Every fortune ever created began as an invisible belief, burning hot inside someone who dared to act on it. Faith is the origin of prosperity. Without it, talent lies dormant, effort becomes routine, and luck becomes irrelevant. The reason most people never experience abundance is not because they lack intelligence, it's because they don't trust the idea that they were meant for more. They've been trained to admire wealth from a distance, but never claim it as their birthright. So they work hard, they stay busy, but deep inside, they've already decided what's possible for them, and that decision shapes their reality. You can study the laws of money all you want. You can read every book on investing, marketing, business. But if you believe you're undeserving or that wealth is reserved for others, then every action you take will secretly sabotage itself. You'll pull back when it's time to push forward. You'll delay when speed is required. You'll question the very thing you asked for, and life will respond accordingly. Faith, when properly understood, is not a wish. It's a knowing, a certainty so strong that you act before the evidence appears. You move when everyone else is still waiting, and that movement, that internal permission, is what separates the rich from the rest. You don't need better odds. You don't need the right time. You need to decide right now that faith is more than belief. It's a tool of creation. It's how the invisible becomes visible, how the impossible becomes your new normal. And the moment you understand that, a deeper truth begins to emerge. Let's speak plainly. Poverty is not always a financial condition. It is first a spiritual one. It begins where belief is buried, where a man stops expecting more and starts justifying less, where he stops reaching for the life he desires and starts defending the life he settled for. You've seen it. A man grows up surrounded by lack. He watches his parents struggle, hears teachers preach limitation, hears preachers glorify suffering, and somewhere along the way he accepts it. Not because it's truth, but because no one taught him how to believe otherwise. And so what happens? He lowers his expectations. He distrusts abundance. He views wealth as suspicious and faith as weakness. He wears doubt like a badge of honor, calls it being realistic. But realism without faith is just fear wearing a mask. The tragedy is this. Most people don't fail from lack of effort. They fail from lack of permission. They never gave themselves permission to think big, speak bold, or walk through the doors that scare them. And so they play small, stay stuck, and pass on their fear like it's wisdom. Faith is oxygen for the soul. Remove it, and even the most talented people suffocate under their own potential. They dream less, risk less, live less, and eventually they begin to resent anyone who still has the courage to believe. But here's the truth. Your life will always shrink to the size of your faith. And until you revive it, until you breathe, believe back into your identity, poverty will linger like a fog, no matter how hard you work. But something powerful happens when belief returns, because from there, a new magnetism begins to form. When a man believes, truly believes, his mind becomes a magnet, not for fantasy, but for aligned reality. His thoughts begin to shift, his emotions sharpen, and without even realizing it, he starts to attract the very conditions that match his inner certainty. This is not mysticism. This is cause and effect. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. And who you are is revealed by what you believe about yourself when no one's watching. That's why some people walk into a room and command attention, not because of their clothes or their money, but because their self-image carries a frequency of ownership. You feel it, and so does the world. Now, Listen closely. Faith is not a mood, it's a magnetic blueprint. Every time you think, speak, and act in alignment with faith, you reinforce that blueprint. You sculpt the invisible structure of your destiny. People begin to respond to you differently. Opportunities you used to ignore now feel obvious. Conversations shift. Energy moves. That's magnetism. But it cuts both ways. If your mind is full of doubt, you repel. If you believe you're not ready, not enough, or not worthy, then no amount of effort will compensate for that internal signal. The universe doesn't obey effort, it responds to certainty. That's why two people can try the same strategy, and one succeeds while the other self-destructs. It wasn't the method, it was the magnet. And the magnet is built with faith. So the question is not, what should I do? Or, the real question is, who must I become to naturally attract what I desire? Because once you become the type of person who expects prosperity, you must take the next step and prove it through bold, visible action. You cannot say you believe and then sit still. Real faith is not silent. It moves, it builds, it risks. Every man who ever built something great had to act before the results existed. That's the test. Can you move when the evidence is invisible? Can you commit when logic screams wait? That's not recklessness, that's faith in motion. You see, most people wait for confirmation, a guarantee, a green light, a promise that it will work, but life doesn't reward the cautious, it rewards the committed. And commitment, fueled by faith, is what causes circumstances to shift. I've seen men lose everything only to rise again because they refuse to retreat. I've seen entrepreneurs take a final breath of belief and invest what little they had and multiply it tenfold, not because the odds were in their favor, but because faith gave them no other option but forward. And here's what separates the faithful from the hopeful. Hope waits. Faith works. You may have an idea, a plan, a vision burning in your spirit, but until you move your feet, nothing happens. Faith doesn't live in your words, it lives in your calendar, your bank statement, your behavior. What you do daily reveals what you truly believe. Faith doesn't ask, will this work? It declares, this must work because I'm aligned with purpose and I refuse to quit. This is the moment where the average man turns back. He says, I'll wait for the right time. But you, the one who understands what faith really is, you know that now is the only time you're promised, and it is enough. But action is not enough by itself, because the man who acts once and gives up gains nothing. It's the man who turns faith into a discipline who receives the reward. Faith that shouts on Sunday but disappears by Monday is not faith, it's emotion. And emotion without discipline is just noise. If you want prosperity, you must master the art of consistent belief. Not once, not when you feel good, but daily, especially when nothing around you validates it. Because that's when real wealth is forged not in the peaks, but in the practice. The world is full of dreamers who started strong, they got excited, made bold declarations, moved fast and quit just as quickly when resistance showed up. Why? Because their faith was a spark, not a fire. Sparks excite, but only fire sustains. You don't build a fortune by believing once. You build it by believing again and again and again. Especially when the bank account is low, when the sales don't come, when your family questions your choices. That's when most people break. But those who continue, those who discipline their faith like a craftsman sharpens a blade, they rise, they grow, they multiply. Because they're not just motivated, they're mastered. Think of faith as a muscle. The more you use it, the more power it carries. And like a muscle, it's built through repetition. Repetition of thoughts, repetition of action, repetition of belief in the face of silence. Eventually, that kind of disciplined faith becomes automatic. You no longer wonder if something is possible, you assume it is. You no longer need to feel motivated. You've trained yourself to move anyway. And when that becomes who you are, prosperity is not a question. It's inevitable.